Yes. So there's a pop-up now on the platform we're using saying that the recording and the transcripts are ongoing. A few housekeeping rules. Please mute your microphone and turn off your videos if you're not speaking, and this will help with the bandwidth as well. Use the raise hand function to request the floor, and we will use the Slido platform for questions. We later have question. Please mute your microphone if you're not speaking, and we'll have a Q&A session and later exercises. We will be using the Slido platform. Kindly maintain professionalism and respectful communication at all time. And again, this event will be recorded. So again, on the Slido, here's a QR code that will be shown throughout the whole training. This should redirect you to the question room on Slido. You can join us by scanning this QR code or on the hashtag UNFCSP. But do not worry, the QR code will be shown throughout most of the slides throughout the whole training. So just briefly on the agenda, we will start first with the UNFC principles, definitions, and we'll delve later into the specifications. After the break, we will be putting everything that we have learned in the context of strategic projects, the application form, and the exercises. So without further ado, I will pass the mic to Robert Thomas from DG Grow for a few opening remarks. Robert?
Thank you, Gadi. Good morning or afternoon. First,
no, you are on mute, Robert.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry for that. So once again, thank you, Gadi, and good morning or afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to welcome you to this training on UNFC that is kindly organized by our colleagues from UNIC and supported by members of the expert group on resource management, basically the group that has been developing the UNFC for a long time. And so this training, as it was said, is focused on the application of UNFC for strategic projects as defined by the new Critical Raw Materials Act. It is already a second training. We organized the first one roughly 1 month ago on 6th of June. And that training was attended by 51 project promoters from 19 countries. So it was a nice participation. I see from the list of participants we have now 65 people. So this is very good. And again, big thanks to our colleagues from UNIC. All the information that these trainings are producing, so the slides, the dedicated guidance, how to apply UNFC for strategic projects, and other material can be found on the dedicated EU page on strategic projects. When it comes to resources, useful resources for you, also we organize at the end of April the full info day about strategic projects. We explain the concepts, how to apply, the scope for evaluation, etc., etc. All this material is also available on that web page, including recordings from the info day. You will also find a help desk line that we set up for all the project promoters and that we are using for you to ask questions and for us to reply to your concerns. Also, there is a frequently asked question section that we are time to time populating with common questions. So please use these resources when applying for the strategic projects under the Critical Raw Materials Act. So I would now shortly summarize the concept of strategic projects and the use of UNFC. So first of all, the strategic project can cover all value chain, so starting from extraction, processing, recycling, as well as substitution. The projects, they have to demonstrate how they contribute to the security of supply, as well as to diversification of our imports of strategic raw materials. And that will be checked against the 2030 benchmarks that are introduced by the Act. So the 10% of the domestic production, 25% of the recycling, and 40% of processing capacity, and 65% diversification goals. For projects inside EU, they have to also demonstrate the cross-border character. So we are looking for projects that will be wider than only at the national level. In case of the outside Europe projects, they have to demonstrate also the mutual beneficial character for both, as well as there should be an added value in the country in which the project is located. So this is important criteria for those. All these criteria are listed under the Article 6 and 7. So you have the eligibility criteria as well as the other required information. And the scope or the attitude towards how we are going to assess those criteria, you can find it in the Annex 3 of the Act. So the call for application is open since 23rd of May, actually the first day that Act enters into the force, and also on the same day we organized the initial meeting of the CRM board, which is a body that will help us to evaluate the projects, and where the high-level representatives of the member states are there. And so the call is permanently open. We will be announcing the cutoff date. This is important to say that currently this is not the only call for application. We will be regularly announcing the cutoff date. So the next cutoff date will be probably at the beginning of next year, depending also on the results of the first call. The cutoff date for this first application was set up to 22nd of August. After the date, the evaluation stage will start immediately. We will start with checking the completeness of the applications. And then after that, once the application is validated, we will move to the technical assessment of your applications, checking the technical feasibility, financial maturity, the ownership structures, and of course the sustainability, environmental, social, and good governance aspects. All this, for that part, we will be using external experts as well. They will help us with this assessment, and all this should be finalized roughly by the end of October. And we hope that we will have a first list of strategic projects announced still this year. Now, a little bit about the UNFC, and this is important to say that we will also hire, apart from the technical, financial, and sustainability aspect expert, we will also hire UNFC experts that will be checking your initial classification. Okay, the reason for that is that first, the UNFC is mandatory, so each application has to have the initial UNFC classification. However, this is not a criterion for selection of the projects. Okay, that's why we are hiring the experts, so that they will check your initial classification, and they will correct if necessary or align your assessment, so that we get at the end a harmonized, reliable UNFC classification, also using the same approach for the assessment. And I'm sure you will hear about this kind of approach, how to assess throughout the training. Okay, so this is about the UNFC. Of course, the benefits of UNFC and why we have selected, I think this will be presented during the training. So at this moment, I think I can stop here. I'm wishing you a very good training. Please use the time that you have the UNFC experts available. So ask questions as much as you can, because that could save your time when you will do the assessment of your projects later on. Okay, so good luck.
Thank you, Robert, for the opening remarks. Thank you for the recap and the overview of the Critical Raw Materials Act and the strategic project process of recognition, let's say. As you mentioned, we do have the Q&A sessions. You can scan the QR code here at the bottom of the slide, but please refrain from asking critical raw materials or strategic project related questions. These Q&A sessions are mostly for UNFC related questions. In case you have any concerns or inquiries about the strategic project, please go to the strategic project main webpage as Robert mentioned. With that, let's delve into the material, and I call on my colleague Slavko Solar to introduce UNFC to us, the basics, definitions, and principles. Slavko, please take control.
Thank you, Gadi. Thank you. I think I took the control. So I would welcome everyone, and within the 2 hours, you will actually see that UNFC is not something that you should worry about while doing your application as such. So let's see if this works. Just to give you a big picture in the background, so why UNFC? The bigger picture in the background is, of course, sustainable resource management in different levels. In the case of CRMA Act is how to ensure the supply of raw materials without compromising environment, economic stability, and social equity. For fulfilling all the requirements on sustainable resource management, we need a lot of information. And this information needs to be relevant, consistent, transparent, comparable, and so on and so on. So this huge amount of information needs to be somehow classified that would be easy to recognize how the sustainable resource management is being done and what is going on that. So the challenge of classification is how to classify it. The simple challenge of classification is seen on the picture when you have old records. Many of you would not be aware of the times of these records, but in my time, we were very much classifying these records according to in the different ways. So by gender, by composer, by tempo, by the date of purchase, and so on and so on. But not to go too far into the challenge of classification, let me say what I believe is the most important slide to understand what the UNFC is and how these things, how the information would be classified. It's important to be aware that UNFC is a resource project and principle-based classification based on 3 fundamental criteria to develop resources. So there are three fundamental criteria lined along the axis, the E, F, and the G axis. The E axis would be environmental, socio-economic viability. The F axis would be technical feasibility, and the G axis would be degree of confidence. In the old times, the G axis was called the geological knowledge. But if I go back and try to explain what the axes are, I would go forward and say that the GX is what we have and how confident we are in what we have. The F axis would tell you what we can actually do with that, what is with the technical knowledge and development we have feasible to do. The E-axis, the broadest one, is looking at the environmental issues, impacts in the impact mitigation, the social issues, and of course, the economics of the projects. So all these criteria are measured against 3 very simple what we could call the classes. And they would be measured against the viability of the certain piece of information on the certain axis. Regarding the technical feasibility, is it viable to do it? The second class, of course, would be, is it potentially viable? And the third one would, in most cases, would be non-viable. There are few other classes which would not be really relevant in our exercise. So in a very brief, we are looking at the three axes and information within those axes we are assessing against its viability. To move further on, a bit more of detail, I would start with telling you that when we classify according UNFC, we firstly classify according the E-axis, followed by the F, and ending with the G-axis. So this is the order that is usually used. As you can see, the categories on the E-axis would be E1, E2, E3, or we could even not use the letter in the classification, just 1 or 2 or 3. In case of EFG would be 1, 1, 1, not mentioning the axis as well. As I said before, assessing against the viability, the E would always be the one desired situation. And this, in this case, for the E-axis would be that development and operation are confirmed to be viable. In the case of E2 would be expected to become, so would be potentially viable in a near foreseeable future. In a case of E3 would be not expected to become viable. So the 1, 1, 1, very simple, is the best way forward. Of course, the world is not that simple, so that's why we also would have subcategories that would more define the situations for the classification, where you would, through the information you have, define the current status. So in this case, in case of E-axis, you would have beside E1, you would have E1.1 or E1.2. You would not have E2 because the authors actually came to the point that these subcategories, this potentially viable subcategories would be such diverse and would in most cases just make a bit of confusion. While further down, you would still have the non-viable part with the E3.1, E3.2, E3.3. So in short, we move to the F-axis and we are on the same, let's say we are playing the same game. When F1 has been confirmed, F2 is a subject of further evaluation, which means it's very close, and F3 cannot be evaluated due to the limited technical data. Here we also have F4, which means that we are not having sufficient information to even start the identification as such. So the F-axis would also have subcategories, and these subcategories would go from F1.1 in production to F4.3. It's not currently under research or development, so nothing is going on. And of course, you have the other subcategories which are defined in a way that would be understandable for those who are dealing with. The last one is the G-axis. The G-axis would start with the G1, which would be a high level of confidence. G2, which would be a moderate level of confidence, G3 would be a low level of confidence, and G4 would here be estimated primary on indirect evidence. So very, very little information. Having here the level of confidence, of course, we'll further discuss, but in general, this is the very top level how to define the whole thing. The G-axis would have the subcategories in the G4 area, the G4 categories. So low estimate to something which would be practically guessing game. Having all this knowledge how it works in a cube that you would like to have a viable project, which would be 1, 1, 1, which would be development and operation confirmed to be environmentally, socially, economically viable, would be F1 technically feasible, technical feasibility confirmed, and of course you would have a high confidence of what you actually have. This 3 dimensions would go also into a 2-dimensional table, which would say what are the viable, potentially viable, and not viable projects, where you would have the minimum number or a set or a level of categories. For a viable would be EF1, 1, and the G would be 1, 2, and 3, while the potentially will be 2, and non-viable would be 3 in very, very general way. To have this a bit more complex is something that we would introduce also subclasses. So the viable project would be under on production or would be already approved for development, which means it's just there. The third one would be justified for development, which would all go into E1, where the F and of course the G would vary. Potentially viable would have mostly number 2, which is potentially viable for EF, and the G as well, and potentially not viable. This would actually show you that you would have more granularity in all this classification categories, subcategories, and subclasses as such. You will see later first how this works for primary, how this works for secondary, and of course how this works in practice in the second half of the presentation itself. So we have a classification, we classified for certain reason, and who would be the users of such a resource classification, who would be the stakeholders, or who would be the requesters of the information. You can see it's quite a set of different stakeholders that are grouped into part of the governments, which would be national, regional governments, could be the industry, so that a company would classify their resources. A part would look at the financial community, which would be a basis for a financing. There is also civil society keen to know what is happening with the resource projects, and of course the society of experts that would further develop. I presented everything in a hopefully quite simplified and simple way to be easy to understand. Behind there is a literature that would support that, and there is a literature which is mandatory, and this is the UNFC principles and generic specifications, which is the top level of the in this hierarchy and documents. followed by supplementary specifications. You will hear more about specifications for minerals and anthropogenic materials. Those two levels of documents are mandatory, while different guidance would help you how to classify, but would of course be just a manual guidance, which is not mandatory. Next to that, I guess you are all aware there are many different classifications. You will hear about the classifications regarding the minerals, but also the other resources would be the bridging documents. Hear about that later as well. Just a few of examples of the bridging documents in a very simplified way. I would mention here, oops, sorry for that. I should not go over time, but I'm close to the end. You have here the examples of bridging from a Chinese, bridging from the KGZ, ex-Soviet Union, and of course, commercial Crisco template-based ones. So just summarizing, telling you the benefits of UNFC, it allows a consistent comparison across the multiple commodities. So it's not only for minerals, in these cases, it's also for secondary raw materials. It's globally endorsed by the UN. Simple to use. I hope I proved that. It can combine different resources into one global system. It informs you on the environmental, social, governmental issue separately, and so on. So the main takeaways I want to leave with you is that UNFC is generic, project and principle based to develop a resource project. 3 fundamental criteria: environmental, social, economic, technical feasibility, degree of confidence, using the 3 main classes of viability: viable, potentially viable, and not viable. I believe with this, I will give back the word to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Slavko. Thank you for introducing UNFC, generic, and showcasing the benefits and how it basically, how the principles are basically formulated and set the ground for our next speaker, more on the specifications. I call on Hendrik Falk to introduce UNFC and putting it in the context of primary raw materials, mineral specifications. Hendrik, please take control.
Good afternoon. My name is Hendrik Falk, and I look forward to showing you how the minerals universe looks when you classify things using UNFC. So the first part is Slavko has introduced the variety of different documents and resources that are available for understanding how mineral classification works. But the central document that I would recommend looking at is the specifications for the application of UNFC to minerals. And it provides a real starting point for understanding specifically how to use this for mineral deposits. It was developed as a document to use the latest generic specifications, but provide the framework in a minerals context, basically. So the first part of the supplementary specification for mineral project is the concept of a mineral project evaluation. And mineral projects may adopt various methodologies when they're being explored, and they may represent different stages of the development in the sort of mineral life cycle, and these may represent different varieties of estimations of the quantities of a mineral that are present in a project. And the key elements that we want to capture during this classification is that the basis for these estimations need to be disclosed, need to be explained, and some of the assumptions behind them need to be disclosed to your audience, basically. So this includes not only sort of the third-party data that you're using if you have historical information or previously discovered information, but also if you're generating new data in-house and how is that data being developed and used. So that's the key starting point for our mineral project evaluation. So in looking at a mineral project, we want to look at what stage of the lifetime a project is at. Is it a prospecting exploration project? Is there already mining? Have we moved on to a beneficiation and processing portion of it? Or is it in a decommissioning stage? Is it in the later phases of the mineral life cycle? Even remediation, and sometimes going through that cycle a second or third time is possible as well. And so understanding what the life cycle of the mineral project is and where that project is at are important for the classification process. And so in addition to sort of just the geological understanding and sort of the level of information that we have collected about a mineral project, we also want to understand and disclose and discuss some of the socioeconomic assumptions that are being made. And these encompass sort of the non-technical issues that can directly impact the viability of a project, including product prices, the legal and fiscal framework of the jurisdiction that you're in, the environmental regulations that are covering that area as well as other social positives or impediments that the project may face. So it may be capturing the good, but it also may be capturing the bad, and those elements need to be evaluated and discussed. There's also a distinction between products that could be produced, and that's at our current levels of technology and pricing and quantities, but also products that might not be produced. And this is one of the differentiations between sort of other classification systems. Here is an opportunity to classify all the minerals and all the commodities in a project, even those that might not be currently and interested to a company or being viable for extraction right now, but they should still be classified and included for future evaluation as well. And so SLAPCO has gone through the different axes or the different classifications for the different axes. And so these apply to minerals very clearly. We have a very simple statement of the G1 as being the product quantity associated with a project that can be estimated with a high level of confidence. So this in the case of an active mine or an active quarrying project, would be the material that you're actively looking at in the next cycle of production. So is it ready to go to a mill? Is it available for the crusher or for the consumer to use? That material is the highest level of confidence. In contrast, if you're at an exploration level, you may be only looking at some of the more less well-defined materials, materials that are based only on indirect estimates. Maybe you have a geophysical survey and you have a good anomaly and you have some information that indicates the anomaly can be translated into a resource in the eventual future. And that might be the G4 level of confidence that you have in such a material. So again, different projects will be at different phases, and different parts of the same project can be at different phases as well. Now, the G-axis is used to really reflect that geological uncertainty. So how much information, how much knowledge do you have? What is the sort of connectivity, the geological background to allow you to estimate and forecast the availability of that resource for a project? And so it can be based on direct data such as drill hole density, sample pacing, or other information sources. but it may also be using indirect data, such as geophysical data or other techniques that don't give you a direct measure of the material that you're going to extract, but it might be something that's correlated to that material. And calibration of methods provide a higher level of certainty than uncalibrated methods, including, and that the accuracy of those measurements should also be included when you're reporting about this classification. So what are your assay methods? What are the rock mechanics and other mineralogical components to a deposit? So these are examined in much greater detail in the mineral specifications document, and I especially refer you to page 16, which provides a lot more information on special qualities for minerals. In the project reporting, we're looking at baseline requirements, including what is the basis for your estimate? How are you calculating this? Is this based on drill hole information? Is it based on actual mining? Or how are you doing that estimation? When was this estimation done? And what is the effective date of that? Often reports will have sort of the date that they are using as an effective date, and they don't include newer data because they're really compiling it up to a set deadline. We want and need to know what is the true mineral product. Often you have multiple commodities in an operation, and for this project and this commodity, which is the commodity that we're looking at, and where are we defining the reference point? So is it in situ in the mine? Is it coming out of the mill? And what is the reference point being used for a project here? And then when you're aggregating quantities, so if you have parts of an operation that you have an estimate that's at a low level of confidence, are you aggregating that with material that's of a very high level of confidence? And how that aggregation, how you're adding it up, is an important part of the consideration here as well. So we want to see the use of the numerical codes, what are the units and conversion factors that are being used, all of the documentation that really has been applied to this project. And we want to ensure that we don't double count. Often when people aggregate things, they add up a reserve statement with a resource statement is often a classic example. And the resource statement may already include those reserves. And so when you add the reserves back to that resource statement, you end up counting the same material twice. And that gives you a miss or erroneous result, basically. And the point of this is for national reporting, or what is the purpose of your classification. That should be stated when you're reporting on your project as well. There should also be relevant requirements of if you're using it to align to an existing national reporting standard, which reporting standard are you using, as well as a statement that who is doing this work. Is there a competent person who has reported on this estimate? How are their qualifications relevant to this particular project should be stated. So now, in many cases, mineral resources have already been reported for a different purpose. And sometimes, rather than redoing all of that work, we can look at ways of bridging or aligning a system of a different reporting system and bringing it into UNFC. And so I wanted to bring up the concept of an aligned system, which is a system that has been demonstrated by the existence of a bridging document to be endorsed by the expert group on resource management. So they're structured systems that we've looked at in detail, and we know how they work and how they mesh with the UNFC. And the bridging document that is sort of evidence of that is a document that explains that relationship between UNFC and another classification system, including guidelines on how to classify estimates by using the UNFC codes. And so there are a number of different bridging documents for different resource types. So each of them can take you from a a different resource classification, such as a PRMS in the petroleum situation. And then using the bridging document, you can align it to the generic specifications of the UN, and then provide the classification and the category definitions that are required. And so the different bridging documents take different paths depending on the resources that you're using and looking at, basically. So in the bridging documents, here's a list of some of the examples. This is an ever-growing list, and they're ever-changing. So new ones are being produced every year. One specific one that I want to point out that's often used in the European context is the case of the CRSCO template, which is used globally to report mineral estimates for stock exchanges. In Europe, the PERC system is one of the aligned systems for the CRSCO template there, and it's used by the European Securities and Market Authority for mineral classification. Other codes in SAMREC use a South African variety. In the US, the SME has a system. In Canada, 43101, National Instrument 43101, is the classification system used for the Canadian Stock Exchange system. But all of these are aligned through the CRSCO template, and there's a bridging towards the UNFC as well that's available for that. Now, the purpose of the CRSCO reporting standards is to provide a best practice set of guidelines for international reporting of mineral exploration results and mineral resources and mineral reserves. And it's important to note that the CRSCO group is an international advisory body without any real legal authority, but it relies on its constituent members to ensure that it aligns with their relevant regulatory and disciplinary oversight rules at the national level. So again, each country may have a different code for its own use and for its own stock exchanges, but they should be relatively harmonized using the international reporting template, very similar to how UNFC is being applied on a national level across many different countries as well. And so currently 15 national reporting systems have aligned to the CRSCO standard, and these are often used as well for companies in their own internal systems as well as their public reporting. And most stock exchanges require that reports follow this standard as well. And so they're at the heart of the CRSCO system is the McCavey box, which is this graph basically showing the increasing confidence of geological knowledge in a vertical axis and the increasing application of modifying factors or contributing factors, as they're referred to by different jurisdictions, to give you a level of understanding of what the confidence of your mineral estimate is moving forward. Now, how does this align with UNFC? Well, if we have a stock exchange report of exploration results, that aligns quite nicely with our 334 in the UNFC classification. If we move to a inferred, indicated, or measured approach reported for a stock exchange, those align with our 221, our 222, or our 223 classifications in the UNFC situation, or as Slavko has presented, mineral reserves, where our greatest degree of confidence is to be had. Those classify in UNFC as 111 or 112, basically, that this is our highest level of confidence in our mineral classification. Now, to try and understand this, how that classification works in a bit more detail, a bridging document has been prepared and was recently passed at the EGRM meeting in Geneva. And this outlines how this classification bridging basically works. But on a more hands-on level, there's also a guidance note which more specifically offers examples and goes into greater details in explaining the move from one system to another. And in that bridging document, there's a discussion, sort of an introduction, a bit of background on the organizations, how the different system classifications work, as well as what are the competency requirements, not only for the UN system, but also for the CRISCO system, and how the two competency systems should align. And then a mapping of the CRISCO template to the UNFC categories and subcategories, as well as a mapping of UNFC back to the CRISCO template as well as relevant references and so on. So there's a lot of useful information in the guidance documents that will help you along this process. And so since the sort of initial release, the relatively simple classification mapping that was available for 2009 has now become more sophisticated. And again, a lot more information is available on how best to apply the UNFC system to your classification. And so in those bridging documents, there are greater amounts of detail than previous versions about how a reported estimate can be mapped to the UN system. Here, this is the example for the E-axis and some of the decision-making points that allow you to sort of look at your project and how it can be translated into a UNFC classification. On the F-axis, there are different sort of levels of studies that are commonly used during mineral exploration, moving from exploration results at the least level of confidence to a feasibility study of an operating life of mine plan at the highest level of confidence. And so how do those different study levels or confidence levels, where our understanding of our technical ability to get minerals out of a rock can be translated into a UN project description? And as Slavko has gone through, the G-axis here as well, and the bridging document also provides how that corresponds to the results that are commonly reported in the CRISCO situation. And there are also additional minerals that may not be reported and actually are not allowed to be reported for a stock exchange, and how they can be applied in the UNFC as well. So the UNFC actually is a broader umbrella that covers more materials than just the CRISCO materials as well. So examples include, when you're reporting a exploration result, to include not only sort of the estimate that you have of the biggest deposit that could be there, but you should also be looking at reporting the smaller, more likely products that are there, and sort of giving a range of the sizes of the very sort of more speculative projects. So again, depending on your confidence, there may be different approaches to how you're reporting your results, essentially. In addition to the bridging document, I also wanted to refer you to the UNFC guidance for Europe, and this brings a variety of levels of understanding to the reader. It can be at a high level sort of for the decision makers, but it also has a lot of secondary information that allows sort of the direct application of UNFC to minerals and how you would classify a mineral resource. And that information is provided in the UNFC guidance document here as well. And really, the guidance document is aimed at two sets of users. Those are including the regional and national authorities that are making decisions based on these classifications, but also the qualified experts and resource estimate preparers in Europe on how to actually classify their projects and apply the UN standard for this purpose. And so ultimately, the goal of the exercise will be allowing a unified national mineral resource accounting to be used in the EU to give national inventories where all commodities can be aggregated and reported in a consistent manner to allow compilation of the resource data and aggregation, but also then decision making based on those results for research or planning, both at a national level, but also at a commercial level, encouraging exploration and ensuring that land use decisions are made in a reasonable fashion that allows for evaluation of the mineral resources as well as other values as well in decision making. And in that guidance document, there are examples of how to sort of classify or use classifications to compare different projects and make direct comparisons and see how projects evolve through time, as well as how to align the classifications with different EU requirements, such as the Infrastructure for Spatial Information in Europe or the INSPIRE project, which is a larger database that allows that aggregation of information on a continental scale and allows the presentation of results basically for all of Europe and not just at a national level. It also shows how to judge the controlling factors and give the qualified experts sort of that guidance on how to make balanced decisions in that categorization through the evolution of a project. And finally, just that there's a detailed guidance available for all of these strategic projects. And I'll hand it over to Gadi to go through this piece now.
You are
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes. Thank you so much, Hendrik. Thank you for putting the UNFC in the context of primary raw materials and minerals project. We know that it's a big factor or a big part in the strategic projects. Also for touching on the Guidance Europe, how UNFC is like a guidance document for the application of UNFC in Europe, and also touching on the detailed guidance for strategic projects, which we will see later in after the break. I pass now, also showcasing the flexibility of UNFC going from primary to secondary raw materials. I pass the floor to Ulrich Karl from on behalf of himself and Marina Wittinghoff to tell us more about the anthropogenic resources specifications. Ulrich?
Yeah, good afternoon, Gary. Good afternoon, dear participants. Thank you for handing over, and thank you also for my co-author of the slides, Marina, as already mentioned. We are now moving from the minerals to the anthropogenic resources, which, let's say, extends the scope of the UNFC. I mean, anthropogenic resources are, of course, the residues from the mining sector, but it's also post-consumer residues like end-of-life vehicles, batteries, and other stuff that can be recovered from the end-of-life flows. And now let's move into this topic from a little bit another perspective. You're aware that minerals can be sourced from domestic mining. They can be imported. It could be from mining or recycling. And the third pillar of raw material supply is domestic recycling. And traditionally, European countries are located on the bottom left of this triangle that you see here on the left side of the slide. So there is an emphasis on imports and less emphasis on domestic mining and less emphasis on domestic recycling. And countries, individual countries, but also the European as a whole, want to shift the red dot from the bottom left to the right. So to become more independent from imports and to emphasize more on domestic mining and recycling. And if you're having a closer look to the raw material demand today and for the future, it becomes clear that mining, either via imports or from domestic mining, will dominate the raw material supply. in terms of quantities. But however, domestic recycling becomes more and more important for various reasons. One reason is it secures jobs in the European Union and its member states. On the other hand, it reduces the import reliance. And the third point is that to a certain degree, it produces less emissions compared to mining. So recycling 1 ton of copper produces less emissions than producing copper from primary mining. As already mentioned, it's currently dominated by primary raw material supply, but the recycling becomes more and more important, which is also reflected in the Critical Raw Materials Act. The benchmarks for recycling have already been introduced by Slavko. The beauty of the UNFC, and this is also the linkage to the previous talk, is that UNFC is applicable to mineral projects, but it's also applicable to recycling projects. Yeah? And the beauty is that they compare the results on a common playing field. As you might know, resource classification of mineral resources has a very long tradition. I mean, the first classifications have been established about 100 years ago. The systems for mineral resource classification have evolved over time. CRISCO come into play as well as the UNFC. But for recycling projects, the classification is quite a new topic. And the UNEC expert group of resource management extended the scope of the UNFC in 2018, which is about 6 years ago. And since this time, recycling projects can also be classified in analogy to mining projects. And this is quite useful because you can compare recoverable quantities if they are either coming from minerals or if they're coming from secondary raw materials. I think the UNFC documents were already shown by previous speakers, but basically there are 3 groups of documents. The first document, it's just a single document. It's about the terminology and the UNFC principles. The second type of document we can see in the middle column are resource-specific specifications. So there are specifications for minerals, which were introduced by the previous speaker, and there are specifications for anthropogenic resources. There are also specifications for renewable energies, for instance, but the topic of this talk is anthropogenic resources. So there are specifications for this type of resources available. And the third package of documents are guidelines. These guidelines provide specific information on how to apply the UNFC, for instance, how to define a project, raw materials project, for instance. It provides some guidance if you want to set up a quality assurance system in your country. So these are these 3 types of document that need to be, it's a family, it's a group of documents that are fully integrated in terms of terminology and that are applicable for anthropogenic resources as well. The agenda for today is that we are briefly looking to the definition of a recycling project. The second point is the presentation of a very short, very simple UNFC use case, so on how to apply the UNFC for recycling projects. This is just a generic example with dummy information. It's just to show you how the UNFC works in practice. And the last slide is just about the conclusions. So let's go into the first point. What is a recycling project? We introduced this first slide because the question came up in previous webinars. What is a recycling project all about? And here I refer to the definition of the projects according to this European CRMA Act. The CRMA Act defines critical raw material projects. Yeah, and this means that this is any plant facility, either on the green field or plants that are existing plants that are extended or repurposed. It means it's not only about new facilities, it's also about existing facilities that are upgraded, that introduce a new technology, that adapt the workflow in order to recover or make a contribution to the recovery of critical raw materials in Europe. And the definition of recycling in their act refers to the European Waste Framework Directive. Those who are active in the recycling sector are aware of this definition. And The third point is the definition of recycling according to the Waste Framework Directive. It means any recovery operation by which waste materials are reprocessed into products. Yeah. And the point is that the linkage between the waste material and the products is the recycling project. So this is the process, and this recycling project is classified under the UNFC. So what are potential raw material resources, sources when we talk about anthropogenic resources? Of course, it's end-of-life residues and it's metallurgical residues. Now we're coming to a very, very short use case. It's still generic and quite simple, and it helps you to understand how the UNFC is applied in the practice. Just imagine that you're a recycler and you're aiming for the development of a new recycling project. You estimate the feedstocks that enter the facility, then it comes to the sorting and treatment processes, and the outputs of this process or the recycling projects are two types of materials. The first one are the recoverable materials. They are sent to an off-taker and they are sold in the raw material market. The second type of flow are non-recoverable materials, and this at the very end might go to a sanitary landfill, or if there's still an energy content in it, it can also be sent to thermal treatment. And I highlighted the recoverable material flows because typically this is the reference point for the UNFC. So the UNFC reports recoverable quantities. Yeah, and these recoverable quantities are usually located on the output side of the sorting and treatment process. So typically, it's the point of sale. The question is how to classify this red-colored box. It means how to classify the recycling project based on the UNFC principles. Basically, it's a framework. It all starts with the stakeholders. So there could be some legal obligation to recover certain materials. There could be a recycling company that is aiming for enhanced recovery, for instance. It could also be an investor who is interested in getting the information about recoverable quantities and the revenues that they gain from this project. So at the very beginning, it starts with some stakeholder starts to initiate this project. It's the kickstart, and the project is defined. There are guidelines available at the UNEC level on how to define these projects, and then the project is evaluated. I think this is a very traditional concept for developing recycling projects. So the viability of recycling projects are evaluated from an economic perspective, but also from a legal perspective. And once the project evaluation is completed, the information is used to classify the project based on the UNFC principles. So basically, the project classification is an on top in order to communicate the evaluation results in a standardized way. And the last step is project reporting. The previous speaker already highlighted this aspect, how it works in the minerals. And there is currently no reporting standard for secondary raw materials available, but we can follow the same procedure as for minerals and report the same type of information. UNFC relates to the third box, to project classification. So it's to communicate the viability of recycling projects in a standardized manner and to make it also comparable with the viability of projects in the mining sector. We have basically three criteria in order to classify raw material projects in general, but also anthropogenic resource projects in specific. We have the three dimensions, the E-axis, the F-axis, and the G-axis. The E-axis is about the environmental, social, economic viability. The F-axis is about the technical feasibility of the project. And the G-axis is about the degree of confidence on the recoverable quantities. And this information is put together in order to classify the project. So how could it work in practice? Just go through these individual axes. I'm starting with the E-axis, followed by the F-axis, followed by the G-axis. If we're looking to the environmental, socio-economic viability. The first point you're starting is you're just starting to map the contingencies that affect the development of the recycling project. So a contingency is also called a modifying factor in the Grisco template, or it's the enablers and the barriers that are on the table for developing the recycling project. And just to give you some ideas, one contingency could be the legal compliance. Another factor could be the social compliance. In the mining, it's called a legal social license to operate. It's about the economics, the profitability. It's if an off-taker is available or not. And the UNFC guidance for Europe that was shown by the previous speaker, this document provides a whole set of factors that should be considered when classifying the project on the E-axis. The second point is that you take these factors, for instance, legal compliance, and you have to assess them. You have to provide a justification for this. So a status on the current legal compliance of the project. Just to give you an idea how this justification could look like, it's like the environmental impact assessment has been completed and submitted to the authority. Permits according to national building regulations, other regulations are currently pending. And this justification is the starting point to select a category on the E-axis. So in this case, for the legal compliance, you select E2. Yeah. And why to select E2? Because it fits to the definition of E2 according to the UNFC documents. E2 means that the development of the recycling project and the operation are expected to become environmentally, socially, economic viable in the foreseeable future. So it means that you not only assess the current status of the project, you assess the likelihood that the legal compliance will be addressed, in the foreseeable future. And you're doing the same with the social compliance, with the profitability and the off-taker, for instance. And just taking a second example with the profitability, the justification could be that the cost-benefit analysis has been performed, and it shows that the profitability is given as long as the bank loan has an interest rate below X% per annum. And what you can see here is that this classification needs to be evidence-based. So in the background, a cost-benefit analysis has been performed, but the results of the cost-benefit analysis, so the results of the economic evaluation, are put into the UNFC structure of classification, and is the starting point to select an E-axis, a category on the E-axis. So it needs to be evidence-based, and here we have the results of the economic analysis. The third step here is, if you went through all the factors and the justification and the assessment of all this, you select the E-axis category based on the lowest rank. Yeah, this means here we have 4 different type of categories. We have E2, E1, E1.2, and E2, and the lowest category in this case is E2. Yeah. So E2 dominates the viability, the environmental, socio-economic viability of the project. So you select E2. This is the final category on the E-axis. Let's come to the F-axis. The F-axis is about technical feasibility. In this case, you can follow the same procedure. Traditionally, a technical feasibility study of the recycling project is carried out, and then you can define different factors. One of these factors could be the readiness of the sorting and treatment technology. In this case, in this dummy example, it's justified by giving the fact that the technology is currently at TRL level 7. And in the UNFC guidance for Europe document, there is a correspondence table between the technical readiness levels and the selection of the F axis categories. So in this case, we have a readiness level of 7, which corresponds to F 1.3. And there could also be other factors like transport infrastructure, energy supply, and so on, and so on, and so on. And here you can follow the same procedure as on the e-axis as before on the last slide. So you can select the lowest rank. In this case, it's F1.3. And this definition of F.13 is given in the UNFC 2019 document and is fully applicable to minerals as well as for anthropogenic resources. We're now coming to the last axis. It's the degree of confidence, and this is the degree of confidence in the product quantity estimates. So it means the degree of confidence of the tons that are produced, that are the output of the recycling project. And this degree of confidence is based or can be estimated based on 3 different approaches. Yeah, I'm not going into the details here. There's a recommendation by the EGRM, by the Expert Group of Resource Management, on how to apply this G-axis use. But one of these approaches is based on the confidence in the estimate approach, which is typically done to estimate the recoverability of mineral resources. But there's also the opportunity to apply a probabilistic approach, which is based on Monte Carlo simulation, which is traditionally used in the petroleum or oil and gas sector. So there are different type of uses depending on the availability and the accurateness of data that are available. But not going into this details now. For here, I'm selecting the confidence in the estimate approach. And it needs to be mentioned that before you start assessing the degree of confidence, the contingencies and the parameters on the E and the F axis needs to be fixed. For instance, you have to fix the technology on the F axis before estimating the recoverable quantities. I mean, this is logic because the technology has an effect on the recycling efficiency, for instance. Yeah. But let's move on. One way in order to estimate these quantities is to perform a material flow analysis on a site-specific level. So you're making a predictive model on the feedstocks that enter the recycling facility, and then there are estimates based on the based on the technologies where the how to convert the feedstock into the outputs of the facility, let's say. Yeah. On the bottom left, you see a very practical example for material flow analysis. This has been taken from an end-of-life flow in Switzerland. And you see we have one feedstock into the facility, and then we have more than 10 different outputs. And the outputs are the one part of the outputs are the recoverable quantities, and those ones are reported at the UNFC. However, the UNFC also allows to map all the flows or to report all the flows, so it fully respects the mass balance principles. So products that are currently produced but not sold on the market because the revenue is too low, can also be reported. These are non-sales productions, for instance, and these non-sales productions are of relevance. For instance, if the technology changes, or if the economic situation changes, a material that is produced without being sold today might be sold in the future, and it's important to have these quantities in inventories as well. So at the very end, we have the quantities. Here is an example. We have 2,800 tons of various metals and 610 tons per year of non-ferrous metals. And the justification provides more information how these data were estimated. Yeah. In this case, it's mentioned that sampling and analysis of the feedstock has been undertaken over the last 5 years. The regional waste outlook estimates a slight increase of the waste volumes by 3%, so over the next 10 years, and a change in the waste composition is not expected, because the feedstock includes metal-containing wastes that are not separately collected. It means this is also the result of this feedstock analysis and of the material flow analysis that is put into the UNFC classification. We are now moving to the compilation of all these findings. So we started with the e-axis, followed by the f-axis, going to the g-axis, and now we're putting the information together. And this is one of these core tables of the UNFC 2019 document. In our case study, we see a E category 2, F category 1.3, and the G1 category. And you take these individual categories, put them together, and identify the class. So the class reflects the viability of the recycling projects. In this case, when we have a 2 to 1, 1.3, we have a potentially viable project. So the class is determined by the categories that you have been selected beforehand. This brings me to my last slide, to the conclusions. UNFC is applicable to recycling projects. I think this is quite new to the raw material market because classifications are traditionally performed for mineral projects, but since 2018, the UNFC is also applicable to recycling projects. The second point is that the classification of the projects needs to be based on evidence. I gave you 2 examples. The first one is about the economic assessment. So economic assessment is performed in a separate study, and then you take the results of the economic assessment, integrate them into the UNFC framework, and select an appropriate e-access category. The third, and this is the last point, is that each classification, no matter if you're looking to minerals or anthropogenic resources, is a snapshot in time. It's a classification at a specific effective date. And the framework conditions, but also the feedstock can change over time. And if there are significant changes in these project settings and in the definitions, a reclassification of the project might be needed. And this is where the beauty of the UNFC comes into play, because you see the involvement of the viability of the project over time. Yeah, and based on the identification and tackling of barriers, and taking the opportunities in developing the recycling project, the project starts with at the very beginning at very low maturity level, and then it moves towards production. And this is the involvement of the viability that can be reflected by the UNFC. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ulrich, to you and to Marina, of course, for this exhaustive presentation and showcasing the uniqueness of UNFC, namely in the application of UNFC to anthropogenic resources and recycling projects. So for now, I will take control. We have a few minutes before we get to the break. Maybe I can I can initiate the Q&A session. I hope the speakers are with me for to reply to certain questions. Here's the QR code. It will still be available even afterwards. So it's here on the top left side of the screen. You can scan and ask any questions you have. So for the first one, I will go ahead and read. Could you say again what is the subject of the date 27th of May? I didn't understand if it was the open date or the next call. I believe this was referring to Robert's part in the beginning. And if I'm not mistaken, the date was actually 23rd of May. And this corresponds to the critical raw materials going officially into force and the opening of the call. Do you want to add anything, Robert?
No, you are perfectly right. It was 23rd of May when we opened the call for application for strategic projects with the deadline, alias the first cutoff date on 22nd of August. So basically now in this period, the project promoters has a chance to fill the applications.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Moving on to the next one concerning strategic metals. If the project goes to intermediate products, so oxides forms, are they still eligible to be strategic projects in the CRMA scope? I believe also this is for Robert. Please refrain from asking questions that are not UNFC related. I dropped in the chat the correct domain for the strategic project team, the official one, and you can contact them on their official email for strategic project related questions.
Indeed, I will not answer this question first. This question about the different, this similar question is already in the frequently asked question on the website. So please go to the specific website on strategic projects, or if you still need some more clarification, use the relevant help desk channel that is on that website, please. This is about UNFC, how to apply to UNFC, and everything related to this classification for strategic projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Now the third question: if we have the environmental authorization to operate, is it a proof of E1 status? Maybe I can pass this to Slavko to answer.
Thank you. Well, definitely yes. If you have authorization, you have a permit, this is the E1 status. But the E1 status will also include the social and economic part. So you would need to add the other information and see if the other parts of information is also the E status. Thank you.
Thank you.
E1, sorry.
Thank you, Slavko, for answering. Where can we find the supplementary specifications, the guidance, and the bridging documents? I will go ahead and answer that. I will drop the link in the chat for you to go through to be accessible to all the UNFC related documents. They're up on the UNECE website. The second one is how to classify concept stage projects when there may not be enough information for a viable classification, but the project itself could be viable. I can start with this one and then maybe pass it to Slavko or Hendrik if they want to add. So yes, UNFC does apply to prospective projects, and this is usually in the lower levels of the classification. So we're talking about E3, F3, G4 classification. I don't know if Hendrik or Slavko want to add.
I would just add here that the amount of information or the type of information that you need to classify, you will see in the second half of this webinar, is or contained in the application form itself.
Okay. What would be and will be measured the social impediment regarding prospecting exploration project? I believe this goes back to the answer that Slavko gave earlier on the environmental authorization as well. So the E-axis does look into these three factors: environmental, social, and economic viability of the project. And with regards to exploration and prospecting projects, this falls under the same line. Am I correct, Slavko or Hendrik?
Well,
or
I was actually answering this question with my answer before. So what do you need to classify which pieces of information are within the application form, as we will see in the second part of the webinar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would a Crisco mineral resource estimation report be enough as project reporting? I believe this calls for Hendrik.
In general, yes. If it's a resource estimate report that's done according to the Crisco template, it will require a bit of alignment, but there should be enough information in it to do a UNFC classification.
Okay.
Let me add here that the Crisco report is very suitable to be uploaded as additional document in the form. So, and this would actually fulfill the requirement as well. Thank you.
Okay, and also for you, Hendrik, there are two questions on qualified experts. How can you become one, and how are they picked? Maybe you can briefly reply to that.
Sure. Qualified experts, basically, if a person has a number of years, usually 5 years of experience in the subject matter, so in the mineral deposit type or in the area that is being evaluated, They should be registered with a professional association or organization that has the capability, that has a set of ethical standards and also the ability to discipline people, as well as having a continuing professional development program as well. So an example would be the European Federation of Geoscientists for a mineral project or so on. That professional association is good. The there is no single place that you can qualify or apply to qualify or anything like that. It's self-reported, and there's a paper on the requirements for a competent person needed for the UNFC available at UNECE as well. And Gadi can include that on the chat as well.
Of course, the list of documents will be attached to the chat.
I would add a sentence here. When we are talking about the qualified expert, we are talking about person doing the UNFC classification. When we are talking about a competent person, we are talking about the CRISCO template-based classification as such. For the qualified expert on UNFC, it's important to know that the user or the information requester is choosing the qualified expert. And this is exactly what Robert said at the beginning, that DigiGrow will set up a group of experts that would review what is being done. How the qualified experts are actually chosen, there is a statement that needs to be fulfilled with the person's knowledge, with the person's skills, with the ethical pledge, and then based on that, the user/requester is picking or not picking somebody that would do the UNFC classification. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Slavko. I think you also replied to the first question on whether strategic projects are indeed needed to be classified in UNFC, and there will be an expert review during the technical assessment, as Robert mentioned in the first part of this training. I have one more question to Ulrich. How do you choose an axe G1, 2, or 3 based on the quantity of a product, speaking for the recycling projects? Ulrich?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for this question. I mean, the UNFC 2019 document, provides a generic definition on the G1, G2, and G3. So for G1, for instance, it's in G2 and G3, it's a qualitative definition that is given in the document. Yeah, G1, for instance, is the low side estimate. Low means low quantities, but there's a high degree of confidence that the project will produce this quantity. The G2 is, in analogy, is the moderate estimate, yeah, with moderate level of confidence. And on the other hand, you have the G3, which is the high side estimate. So the quantities that are recoverable are estimated to be very, very high, but the level of confidence is very low. So you can assume that for G1, the uncertainties are very low and the data quality is very high. On the other side, G3, the data quality might be poor, and the level of confidence is, let's say, not so well than in G2. This is just a qualitative definition. And in order to come to the exact numbers, there are 3 different let's just say mathematical approaches in how to estimate these quantities. And one of it that was already mentioned is this confidence of the estimate approach, and another one is a probabilistic approach. And once you get the results of these quantitative estimates, you have to select the appropriate G1, G2, or G3 category. There is already a document available that provides further guidance on this G-axis use. It was developed by the G-axis task force of the EGRM, and the report has been published on the website.
Thank you.
Does this answer the
Thank
question?
you.
I mean, this is we can talk a lot about the g-axis. So this is just an initial answer. I hope it's fine for now.
In any case, Ulrich, we will have another Q&A session later before the ending of the training where we'll take and we'll continue to answer these questions. For now, I would say or suggest let's go for a 5-minute break before resuming the training itself. Thank you.
Is there a lot of
Okay. I think we can resume the training. Just a brief 5-minute break. I hope everyone's back and everything is in order. So now, in the first part, before the break and before the Q&A session, we learned about the UNFC principles, from the general principles up to the specifics, and we even saw a use case and the Q&A session, more on a theoretical level, more or less. And now it's time to put everything that we've learned in the context of strategic project, specifically the strategic project form, in accordance with the EU Critical Raw Materials Act. With that said, we also have another Q&A session that will follow before the end of this training session. So please do not hesitate to pose your questions and concerns. With that, I repass the floor to Slavko to introduce a bit and put the UNFC in connection with the strategic project form. Slavko, please take control.
Did I took the control?
Yes, yes.
Actually not seeing the slides. What is happening here? Can you please reload? Okay, I'll go here. I will take control from the other computer. It's a bit complex. I don't know what happened. But this is the fun part we are coming to. In the second part, we actually want you a bit to see how the UNFC classification should work within the frame of the application forum for strategic projects. And the last part will actually be an exercise that you would test your knowledge/skills that you learned throughout the session today. Let me start with the application scope. So we are talking about the Article 7 of the CRMA Act, that UNFC is a criterion for recognizing raw materials project, a strategic project, and needs to be classified. I would also point out the classification process that already Robert mentioned. So the project promoters would classify their project, which is not a criteria for recognition, and the classification done by the promoters will be reviewed by the commission, and we'll get the feedback. As you were hearing in the past hour and a half almost, UNFC is applicable not only to extraction, to primary raw materials, but also to processes, secondary raw materials, recycling, and substitution itself. The purpose is to highlight the project sustainability, technical maturity, and of course, degree of confidence in the product estimate. We had the question in the previous Q&A about the CRISCO report. The supporting evidence is ideal place where you upload the report itself as a supporting evidence. So moving forward, this one, yes. It is important to be aware that classification for strategic project should be simplified and should follow a top-down approach, which means you are looking from the top down and trying to do the classification, starting with the broad classification, starting with classes, categories, and then diving into the details, which would mean subclasses, subcategories. And of course, at the end, you would verify if this works or not. How this works in practice, you have to be aware that the strategic project form is the source of the information. So the classification supported by interconnecting different fields specified in the forum for the CRM to the UNFC axis. These fields would serve as controlling factors for different annexes, for different axes of UNFC. I wrote here annex because within the annex of this presentation is the forum itself, and you would see later down how this is done. So To repeat, we start with the classes and the subclasses. We go to the categories and the subcategories, and we do the verification at the end. Important thing that I'm stressing again is connecting to the strategic project forum. It's useful to facilitate. It uses the controlling factor defining social, economic, environmental, technological, and geological factors, and assist in the project itself. It does impact the viability, as we already see when you are answering these questions, and it connects to the certain axis. It gives more information on the clarity and the granularity itself. We were hearing before by Ulrich that you would use the lowest rank. I believe also it's important to be aware that not all the parts of information or controlling factors would not be of equally important in every case. So it is on the expert to actually evaluate that and gives what we would call the balanced judgment. Moving further, starting with the first point, which is connecting the strategic project forum to the UNFC axis. As you are aware, there are 9 sections, and here we already colored certain sections and linked them to the UNFC axis. So the E-axis would be the green areas, F-axis would be the chapter number 4, the project technical feasibility, a part of financial viability that would look to investment in the technical part. And of course, the G-axis would be the raw material information as such. So moving further, top-down approach would give you the idea approximately where do you stand. In this case, what is useful to take would be the potentially viable project. And then when you look at the potentially viable project, you would go a bit further down and you will see if that's a development pending, is it on hold, is it unclarified, sorry, is it on hold or is it pending? I went further down to the non-viable. And you would see it's not pending, but it's on hold for certain, let's say, permits or certain unclarities that would be that things are still in movement. So that would be the very upper level. Then you would go to categories and you would look at the E2 axis and you would see if this would fit with regard to the controlling factors or the information that you would have in the forum itself. You would do the same for the F axis, that the technical feasibility is probably a subject of further evaluation, which means there needs to be some funds or something technically solved to progress with the on the level that technical feasibility would be confirmed, which would be the FF1. This could then be followed by the category G, which would say that the confidence, the level of confidence on what we have on the product quantity and the quality is of moderate level. And of course, in the course of the project, you would also need to raise the confidence level, or in simple terms, be more sure that what you have is something that would be useful further to process, to extract, whatever, and that would make a project, of course, feasible in the long run. Then you would go to the subcategories. Within E, you already said there is no subcategories. Within F, you would look at, and maybe you would say that the project activities are on hold, and the justification as development is the subject of a significant delay because the project would be one way or another on hold based on what we have. So having this process, looking at the application forum and linking the request for information or simply questions to UNFC access, looking at those, trying to classify this information that you are putting in, you would then come to put all together. And of course, you would verify if this, what you were doing in a course of this exercise is still valid at the end, and you would actually verify your classification. So just coming back and repeating what I walk you through. First, connecting the forum, the questions to the UNFC. Second, doing the UNFC classification, sub-classification, categorization, and of course, verification at the end so that you feel comfortable in what was done. For this, you would also have a lot of literature available, but I would also point out that for this specific case, we developed so-called details guidance on the classifying strategic projects according to the UNFC. So is this the next one? Yes. Coming back, what is important again, to connect the information, because this is the source of information that you are classifying according to the UNFC, from the forum to the access. And in the case of the fields or the questions, this is how it looks like. And you will see the chapter 3 is only the G-axis, the chapter 4 is F-axis. All the rest would be looking at the E-axis, meaning environmental and socio-economic economic factors. So I would stop here, give the control back to Gadi, and just tell you that all the slides would be available, including the slides that would have a detailed areas, questions that would be linked to certain axes. Within the forum itself, I should stress that what you do regarding the UNFC, you have a field which you just put in your classification conclusion, which would be what do you do with regard to E-axis, F-axis, and the G-axis, which would be 1, 2, 2, or 1, 1, 1. That's all what you do within the forum itself. I would stop here and, as I said, give back the word to Gadi to run the exercise. Thank you. Gadi, are you with us? You are on mute.
Of course, always a rookie mistake. Now you hear me.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yes. Perfect, and thank you for the presentation, Slavko, and showing us the top-down approach. As you said, everything will be made available after this training. And also, as you said, now up for the fun part. So we'll be running a series of exercises on different strategic projects. I know that these exercises are all hypothetical. They're just used to corroborate the case itself. and we'll be going through an extraction project, then recycling, then processing. We'll see how this will play out given the time. So the process is I will give you the problem, we will go through it, we will see the question, and through the Slido with the QR code here, you will be able to answer, and we'll see what the answer is and the justification behind it. So without further ado, I think now that if you scan the QR code, you will be joined to the pool. And then after a couple of seconds, when we run into the question, you will start being able to answer. So let's start with our first exercise, lithium extraction project. So consider a lithium mining project in Italy with a plan to extract lithium from high quality spodumene deposits. So given the benchmarks for strategic raw materials as outlined by CRMA, this lithium extraction project holds strategic significance due to the increasing demand for lithium ion batteries and in the energy storage system, of course. So the project is in need to expedite the permitting process. Therefore, they're applying for strategic project. Now, the project promoter has collected the relevant information for the UNFC classification tied to this project based on the strategic project form and the UNFC controlling factors as Slavko showcased earlier, and assigned them to the different UNFC axes, the E, F, and G. So let's begin with the first axis, the E axis. The project was in ownership of an exploration permit during which a pre-feasibility study, evaluation of the resource reserve, environmental impact assessment, and operational plan were conducted. The project is currently preparing to apply for an extraction permit. Current plans and assessments suggest that the project's development could proceed forward in the foreseeable future. With regards to the economic aspect, the submitted business plan includes information on production sharing, royalties, taxation, market demand, and production costs. From an environmental standpoint, the project has issued a positive environmental impact assessment that is compliant with the Italian regulation. Additionally, the project is initiating an application for mining waste permits to be submitted for public inquiry. Land use planning is also under process, and given that the area is where the project is located is remote and historically centered on mining activities, social contingencies and opposition seem unlikely. So the first question is, what is the correct UNFC category for the E-axis? Is it E1, E2, or E3? I've also provided the definitions with supporting explanation here on the right side of the screen, with E1 basically being viable, E2 potentially viable, and E3 non-viable. So I will give you a bit of time just to soak everything in before we jump into Slido and respond to the question. I have my stopwatch here, so I'm following the time. All right, let's go. So I do encourage people to join, since it will help you understand and see whether what we've learned so far is going correctly or not. So please do not feel shy to join. I will give you a bit more time. Let's go up to 25. Let's go up to 25 participants, more or less. All right. More. Yes, more people are joining. That's good. In any case, the QR code will stay with us throughout the whole classroom exercise session, so people can join more and more. So let's go back to the first question. We have 30 seconds to answer. What is the correct UNFC category for the E-axis of this lithium mining project? Is it E1, viable, E2, potentially viable, or E3, non-viable? Three, two, one. So the majority has answered E2, and that is correct. Great first question. So everyone already understands the E-axis. So yes, here the reason it's E2 because it was in ownership. So currently no permit. It's still in the pre-feasibility study phase. It's preparing to apply, and the plans and assessments, they suggest development in the foreseeable future. So E2 category for this project is given. Correct. Moving on to the F-axis, the project has completed the pre-feasibility study, but the project is still in the planning phase and hasn't commenced extraction operations since the development await the extraction permit. So again, what is the correct UNFC category for the F-axis this time? Here, it might get a bit trickier because we're including the subcategories. So is it F1.1, F2.2, F2.1, or F3.1? So F1 being the technical maturity is confirmed. F2 is the development are subject to further evaluation. F3 cannot be determined due to limited data, and F4 where operation hasn't been identified. I'll give you a bit of time to reflect on this question. All right, let's jump back to Slido. So what is the correct UNFC category for the F-axis? That's good. We have 30 enthusiastic participants with us now. That's a good number. Five, three, two, one. Let's see what the majority has answered. So it's close between F2.1 and F2.2. Let's see what the correct answer is, F2.2. This is a bit of a tricky one. Here, the reason F2.2 is because we're still in the pre-feasibility study. So within that phase, the project is still planning in the planning phase, basically, and no development have initiated since it still awaits permit, sorry, the extraction permit. And we can see here on the subcategory level, the difference is that one is justified and one is currently on hold. So we're waiting for the extraction permit before commencing operation. Now let's go back to, let's move on and go to the degree of confidence, the G-axis. So the lithium reserves have undergone a detailed exploration campaign and are well documented with sufficient investigation measures and carried studies, including geochemical and geophysical analysis to estimate the lithium quantities and qualities, so volumes and grades, basically. There's also substantial geological knowledge about the area. The project has conducted a pre-feasibility study that includes reserve estimates signed off by a competent person. The reserve estimates are probable as per the PERC standards. PERC is part of CRISCO, what Hendrik touched on earlier in his presentation. The project is certain with moderate degree of confidence that the foreseen amount of produced lithium will be met. All supporting documents on the estimates have been submitted with the strategic project application form. So what is the correct UNFC category for the G-axis? We can see here on the right side the definition of the G-axis as per the UNFC 2019. So G1, estimate the quantities are estimated with high level of confidence, G2, moderate levels, G3, low levels of confidence. And below that, we have the bridging table that Hendrik showed earlier in his presentation from the Crisco template to UNFC. I'll give you a bit of time to read and process the question. Okay, let's move on to Slido. Get ready. Please tap in your answers. What is the category for the G-axis in that case? Ten more seconds. The majority answered G2, and in that case, the correct answer is G2. So following the information and the bridging document here, we see that we're in the pre-feasibility phase. We're talking about mineral reserves rather than resources, and are probable. So the equivalence in UNFC terms is G2. But here it is necessary to note that when using a direct bridging, for the UNFC classification, it is necessary to take a zoomed out picture when it comes to the E and F axis. There, with the UNFC, it's more of a comprehensive overview on the environmental socioeconomic viability and the technical feasibility. So now let's recap everything for this project. Let's apply what Slavko showcased earlier, the verification methodology. What is the correct UNFC classification for this lithium project? Is it E1.1, F1.2 G1, viable and approved for development, E2, F2.2 G2, potentially viable, development on hold, or E3.2, F2.2 G2, non-viable, development unclarified? I'll give you some time to look at the table. Okay, 30 seconds. Again, is it viable, potentially viable, or non-viable? Ten more seconds. Let's see. 100% on potentially viable. Let's hope this is the right answer. It is the right answer. So good job for everyone. It is the correct answer. This project is classified as potentially viable with the development on hold as E2, F2.2, and G2. Let's move on now to exercise number 2 on a permanent magnet recycling project. So a similar approach is applied. For the E-axis, the project is the result of several R&D, research and development projects in the field of permanent magnet recycling, and had public subventions from regional entities. The company bought last year a land where they built a new recycling plant in a region with an interest to invest in circular economy. They are waiting to sign a partnership with a big company from e-waste collection sector. In this moment, the project is working with an environmental consultancy company on the environmental impact assessment in order to present the project to environmental/industrial authorities. The previous work has been done in the R&D plant that the company already has elsewhere. So what is the correct UNFC category for the E-axis? Here, it's a bit different. We're talking about a recycling project and we include the subcategories for the E-axis. So if it E1.1, E1.2, E2, or E3.1. Viable with the subcategory definitions, potentially viable, no subcategory definitions, or non-viable. Give you a bit of time to okay, get ready. What is the correct category for the E-axis and for this exercise? Is it 1.1, E1.1, E1.2, E2, or E3.1? Let's see what the majority has answered. 54% have answered E2. Let's see, the correct answer is E2. In fact, here it has public subventions. They bought the land where they're starting the new recycling plant. They're waiting to sign a partnership, and the environmental impact assessment are currently undergoing. So yes, it is potentially viable in terms of the E-axis, and which is the environmental socioeconomic viability of this axis. Moving on to the F-axis. So the project looks to recycle permanent magnets in a closed loop, magnet-to-magnet recycling. The process is validated in an industrial pilot scale. The company estimates their TRL, which is the technology readiness level of the process, at 5. The upscaling of the process is under assessment by experts of the company. First environmental benefit of the processes compared to primary extraction of REE has been done and demonstrates the benefits of recycling. So what is the correct UNFC category? F. Is it F1.1, F1.2, F2.1, or F2.2? Again, F1 being the technology, the maturity is confirmed, or the development also, or F2, where it needs further evaluation. F3, it's cannot proceed due to limited data, or F4, the project operation, no development has been identified. Let's proceed to Slido. Get ready. So what is the F-axis category in that case for this permanent magnet recycling project? Ten more seconds. Let's see. So the majority has answered F2.2, F2.1, which is the correct answer. This one is a bit tricky, but some of the processes, some of the information do indicate to an F2.2. Here we're talking about the project is validated in an industrial pilot scale with the given TRL. So the correct answer is F2.2. The activities are ongoing to justify development in the foreseeable future. Let's proceed. Now the G-axis. This one is a bit difficult, let's say, but let's see whether we got the gist of it or not. So G-axis, in press releases, the company is communicating that the plant will have a capacity to treat up to 1,000 tons per year of magnets, doing first physical treatment and later magnet recovery. The product is reprocessed magnets. The company declares the intention to work with 3 main permanent magnets waste flows: permanent magnets from e-scooters, from vehicles, and from wind turbines. So for e-scooters, the company knows that the dismantling of the product is easy and cost-effective. The company is discussing with a e-waste collector in order to secure a certain volume of e-scooters end of life in 2 or 3 European countries, but this partnership is still not fully finalized. In vehicles, the company is under discussion with vehicle scrap companies, but discussions are less in advance compared to e-scooters. Finally, based on the MFA, the material flow analysis, the decommissioning of wind turbines with permanent magnets is not expected to have a significant volume of magnets in the short term. The company does not consider it as major waste for recycling until 2035. So what is the correct category for the G-axis here? Is it G2 of reprocessed magnets from e-scooters with G3 from vehicles? All of them are G2, or G1 from e-scooters and vehicles, and G2 from wind turbines. Let's move on. Ready? Again, is it G2 plus G3 in that case, or all G2, or we're talking about G1 and G2, G1 from e-scooters and vehicles, or G2 and G2 from turbines? Ten more seconds. 3, 2, 1. So the majority have answered G2 from e-scooters and G3 from vehicles, which is the right answer in our case. Here, we need to note that the discussions to secure from the magnets from this waste stream are advanced for from e-scooters and less advanced for from vehicles. It is also necessary here to mention that in the strategic project form, there will not be the opportunity or the option to indicate which waste stream in the UNFC classification, but it will be supported by the evidence or the supporting documents that you will provide with the application form. Here, also another point, it is a bit irrelevant in our case to mention the wind turbines because they're just render the classification in lower classes. And let's remember the point of effective time here, effective date when the classification is given and what is of most significance in our case. So let's put everything in one classification here. So what is the UNFC classification for this permanent magnet recycling project? Remember the top-down approach that Slavko showed. Is it E2, F2.1, G2 plus G3? Is it E1, F1.2, G1 plus G2? Is it E1.1, F1.3, G1? E2, F2.2, G2 plus G3. Let's see what everyone answered. Is it a potentially viable development pending project? Is it a viable project with approved for development? Is it a viable project justified for development or a potentially viable project development on hold? Ten more seconds. Let's see. So the majority have answered potentially viable with development pending, which is the right answer. So yes, everyone is getting the gist of it. I think the theory or the principles at the beginning were clear. Now let's move on to our third exercise, which is a copper processing project. Now that we have some experts amongst us, we might go a bit faster, staying conscious of time. So a copper mining project is planning to expand its operations with a processing plant. The mine is currently located in a historically significant mining region in Spain. Keep in mind, these projects are hypothetical. The project aims to leverage the existing mining site to process copper ore into copper concentrate, which is crucial for various industries, of course. This copper-rich region is well established with infrastructure to support mining and processing operations, including transportation networks and access to utilities. The foreseen processing plant will be at a 20 kilometers distance from the mine. The processing project wants to apply for strategic project label for financial purposes. So the project promoter has collected all the relevant information and assigned them to the different UNFC axes. Let's start with the E axis. So an environmental impact assessment has been completed and the project has received preliminary environmental approval. The processing facility is designed to minimize emissions and water usage, complying with the Spanish environmental regulations. The project is also preparing to submit waste management plans for public consultation. The project has undergone a detailed feasibility study. However, adequate funding has not yet been secured for the project's development. The project site is in a region with a long history of mining activities and provides jobs to most of the local community. Preparations for final permits are ongoing. So what is the E-axis category in our case? Is it E1.1, E1.2, E2, or E3.1? Again, E1 being viable, E2 potentially viable, E3 non-viable. Let's go to Slido. I will be a bit quicker here, but no worries, everything will be made available later on. So what is the right answer for this copper processing project on the E-axis? 1.1, 1.2, 2, 3.1. Ten more seconds. Let's see. So the majority has answered E1.2, whereas the correct answer here is E1.1. Given that everything is in order, the only, let's say, contingency in that case is the securing of funding. And with the strategic project label here, this should be somehow streamlined. So, and the preparations for final permits are ongoing. This one is a bit of a tricky one, but it is necessary to evaluate all the information available in our case. Let's see the F axis. So the project has completed its feasibility study, which includes detailed engineering designs and technological assessments. The processing technology to be used is proven and reliable, ensuring efficient conversion of copper ore to copper concentrate. Although the feasibility study is complete, the project is in need to secure adequate investments before commencement of construction. So what is the correct category for the F-axis? According to UNFC, is it 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, or 2.1? So here I suggest we go a bit into the subcategory details. So production taking place, capital funds have been committed, or 3 studies have been completed to demonstrate the technical feasibility and operations, or the 2.1, which activities are ongoing to justify the development. Let's see what everyone has to answer. Is it again 1.1 on production, 1.2, no capital funds have been allocated, or 1.3, or 2.1? Ten more seconds. Let's see. So the majority has answered F.1.3, which is the correct answer. Here, it cannot be F1.2 because no capital funds have been committed yet. We have a technology that is proven and reliable. We're at the detailed feasibility study, and we're just waiting for investments to commence. Now, last axis for this project, the G-axis, the copper ore at the existing mining site has been well documented through extensive exploration and drilling campaigns. Detailed geological surveys and sampling have provided a high degree of confidence in the quantity and quality of the ore, meaning that the ore reserves are confirmed and the processing facility is assured of a consistent supply of raw material. The project promoter has all supporting documents in order. So what is the G-axis category? G1, high level of confidence in product estimates, G2, moderate levels, or G3, low level. Let's see. What is the correct answer? Ten more seconds. 3, 2, 1. So the majority has answered G1, which is correct. Yes, so here we have a high degree of confidence. The processing facility is assured of a consistent supply of raw materials. Let's remember, it's in a mining area with a long history of mining. And now let's sum everything into an overall classification of the project itself. What is the classification, the UNFC classification of this copper processing project? Is it 1.1, 1.11, or 1.1, 1.21, 1.1, 1.31, or 2, 2.1, 2? Let's keep in mind the top-down methodology. Let's see. Is it a viable on production project, a viable project with approved for development, viable justified for development, or potentially viable with development pending? Ten more seconds. 2, 1. 91%, which is the right answer. The project is viable and justified for development. With that, I conclude the exercises and I am very elated with the results. I think many of you have answered correctly and got the gist of the UNFC classification. So congratulations to our trainers and to you, of course. Now, before we move on to the concluding remarks and the closing of the training and the follow-up material, etc., let's go ahead and answer a few questions in the Q&A session. So let's start with the ones that have been asked earlier in the first session. Is it necessary for companies, organizations, or associations collaborating in a project to be from different countries? I do not see this being UNFC related. Maybe Robert, is this for you? And at the same time, maybe you can answer the question, what is the process of hiring UNFC experts by DG Grow?
Okay, we agree that we will not answer questions not related to, but okay, so for the first one here is no, it's not necessary that there are companies from different countries. But as I said, you have to demonstrate for European project, you have to demonstrate the cross-border value. So of course, one way of demonstrating is that there is a collaboration on the projects, but there are other means, other ways of how you can demonstrate a cross-border value. You know,
Okay.
what is the process of hiring UNFC experts by DG Grow? I think that that applies to all experts. We are following strict, transparent rules. We have set up we have published a call for experts. This is on our website. That the experts can put forward themselves, fill the application, and apply. And if registered, they will be in a pool of experts that we will be using for selecting and allocating expert according to the applications. We will be very careful on the conflict of interest aspects, also for non-disclosure statements. All these aspects will be taken very, very carefully into account when selecting the experts from our pool. And regarding the UNFC, when you are applying to this pool of experts, you have to provide also some information about your background so that we see that you have really experience in applying UNFC in the, let's say, industrial scale. And of course, that the trainers today, I think nicely demonstrated that, if they apply, they would be the right candidates for this purposes.
Thank you for your reply, Robert. Here, maybe I can pass these two questions to Hendrik. One is, or rather a comment, then a question. They cannot be lithium reserves if not production mine. And the second one, if for a single project, some quantities are recognized as proven reserves, some as possible resources, how the project is ranked on the G-axis.
Sure. The first point is correct that by the sensu stricto using the Crisco definitions, if you have reserves, it would be in a producing mine. But there are reserves that have been calculated for pre-production situations as well. So you have to be cognizant of what the application is. It also demonstrates a challenge with translating from a variety of different national standards that are used in other countries as well, where other terminologies may be being used in different languages and then being translated by, say, a Google Translate or something like that into English. And that can muddy the waters. So you have to look at each situation and each application correctly as well. And so in a single project where you have some quantities that are proven reserves, so very reliably understood, versus others, this depends on what your intent with the classification is. It's a user-driven system. So are you trying to present that you have the most material that is likely to be economically valid? Then using the secondary possible resources as a classification with the addition of the proven resources or reserves is the correct answer. If you're trying to demonstrate that the project can provide that material imminently, very immediately, and just absolutely turn on tomorrow, then just classifying the G1 proven reserves or presenting that as the classification may be the appropriate answer to that. It depends on your situation. If you're combining the two, then the classification defaults to the lowest possible classification there. So I hope that addresses your questions.
Thank you for that, Hendrik. The last one is, I still do not understand when the project is considered strategic. As we said, this is for UNFC related questions in the Q&A, but to put simply, a strategic project has to be recovering or extracting or focusing on strategic raw materials and making a significant contribution. But more on that on the official strategic project website. With that, I conclude the Q&A. We're literally on time, so maybe I can pass the floor again to Robert for quick closing remarks before moving to Slavko for the final words. Please, Robert.
Okay, I will be very brief, and I think that first of all, you guys, you deserve a big applause for a very good training. I especially like the practical exercises that you created. I think they were very illustrative and nicely demonstrated the power of UNFC that in because it's a relatively simple to apply, and as the result showed, the applicant the participants to this training, the majority were able to quickly pick up the right classes. So I think that the purpose of the training was fulfilled 100%. I would again, namely, want to thanks to Gedi and Slavko, as well as Henrik, Ulrich, and Marina that helped Ulrich with the slides. All the material will be available, and please use this knowledge and information for assessing your projects when applying for the status of strategic projects. So thank you very much once again, and good luck with your applications.
Thank you, Robert. Slavko, I pass the final words to you.
Thank you. Well, the main takeaways are on the slide. A lot of information still there. You'll see, we were talking about the info day. It's available. We are having a post-training materials. We are also organizing a help desk. So a lot of information is still available. You would have also our emails. At this point, we would, besides the questions or clarifications needed, we would also look for the feedback on the webinar. And most of all, thank the participants for making a successful webinar. With this, I would close the webinar. Thank you.